Welcome to the Configure Price Quote podcast. My name is Sohn and I'm the founder of CPQ Consulting. This podcast is 100% focused on Configure Price Quote, also known as CPQ, and will provide you useful insights into this topic. Today my guest is Erik Pilgrim, founder and CEO of RenderDraw. RenderDraw focuses on visual CPQ and 3D product visualization on Salesforce, with an emphasis on helping companies make complex products easier to configure, understand, and quote. I wanted to have Erik on the CPQ podcast because visual selling keeps coming up as an important topic for manufacturers and other sellers of complex products. Welcome to the CPQ podcast, Erik.
Pleasure to be on here. Thank you all.
Excellent. Excited to have you on. Erik, let's start maybe by telling me what you did before you started RenderDraw.
Of course. I used to run pre-sales and product for a company named Agnostics that focused on SAP integration and was in the SAP space for a very long time. I was in Salesforce even before that, but running the integration teams both on product and pre-sales gave me real insight into a lot of these manufacturers. We were pretty manufacturing focused at that time, and that's ended up how I started RenderDraw actually, by coming up with the underlying idea based off of having multiple configurators in a particular scenario. And back in those days, there was only a single visualization provider, which was also a configuration software. So there's a lot more use cases out there that I saw with my own eyes, and that's kind of what inspired and seeded the idea.
Excellent. And when did you start RenderDraw again?
I started RenderDraw right before the pandemic, so about late 2019, early 2020.
Yeah, excellent. And what actually made you open that company or found the company, right? So you were with other companies before, already had the safe job. Why did you want to have the startup company and all the uncertainty that comes with that?
Well, it's funny you mentioned that. I've always kind of wanted to start a company even before I founded RenderDraw. So I had a few kind of smaller side hustles, I guess, for the lack of a better term. I knew I wanted to be able to do more and have creative control over the things that we were doing. So as part of that, I just knew that was basically the time for me to be able to go all in. And unfortunately, it happened right in the middle of a pandemic or right at the beginning of a pandemic. So it wasn't the best time, but as I've found over the past few years, there really isn't a best time to start a company. It's generally pretty rough across the board.
That's true. That's true. And speaking about that, what are some of the key lessons you've learned so far from this whole startup journey?
I could probably fill the whole conversation with this. I would say finding really good partners is really important. There are a lot of partners out there that both on the services and implementation side and on the product side that are well-intentioned, but probably don't have your best interests in mind or may not be as focused on the problem that you're working on. Outside of that, there are a lot of things that I've really tamed myself over the years, but just taking on too much would be a real big issue up front. And now we kind of filter and down select what we choose to take on to make sure we can actually deliver a fantastic product and experience.
And what influences your thinking most these days about visualization and manufacturing? Is there anything that stands out?
There's a lot that stands out. I get a lot of inspiration from a lot of consumer technologies and consumer experiences. I think there's a real blend that we achieve based off of taking a look at companies like Meta or Apple. Apple does a lot in the visual space. And based off of those experiences, those APIs, those things that we get to touch and use on a daily basis, bringing that over into an enterprise space and going forward with the idea that those have to be at that level of experience in order for us to be able to release them. Otherwise, we don't touch it. Those are really, really big motivating factors for us on the product side. And then obviously some of the biggest manufacturers in the world now, we get to work alongside and help out. We get a lot of product feedback and a lot of ideas from these giant, both tech and manufacturing companies out there, just based off of their real world use cases and need.
Excellent. And before we talk a little bit more about RenderDraw, one more personal question for you. What do you like to do when you don't work? I still hope you have some time where you don't have to work.
It's mostly work for me. Outside of that, I've got a lovely wife and two children. Both of my girls are about 2 and below, so 2 and 5 month old. So I got my hands full whenever I'm not working.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So I see. So there's not much time for anything else but work and the family. Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. Excellent. Then let's talk about RenderDraw, right? So can you tell me in a couple of words what RenderDraw does and what products and services you offer?
Yeah. So RenderDraw is a visualization and interaction layer that sits on top of a lot of CPQs, mostly in the Salesforce ecosystem, but now into adjacent ecosystems as well. We started off with a 3D visualization tool that was an in-place adjustment that you could just basically put 3D visuals on whatever you want. Since then, we've really honed in on the messaging. We were very broad in general, where our marketing terms were like 3D and those kind of things, which didn't really resonate or sit well with other people. What we've kind of honed in on is manufacturing lifecycle. So from beginning of quoting, product discovery, all the way through configuration, and then post configuration, asset, digital twin, and spare parts reordering, everything in that case. And then honestly, we've had quite a bit of uptick in high tech as well, both in the data center world and in high tech manufacturing. So in that space, basically, we're taking care of everything before and after the quote and making sure that customers have a great experience and are actually purchasing or servicing the thing that they actually need to service based off of visual verification.
Hmm. Excellent. And you mentioned additional platforms besides the Salesforce platform. Which ones are you talking about here?
Yeah, so we've got a standalone product that is requires no CRM whatsoever, which was just released. It's Journeys, which Journeys is effectively AI plus 3D presentation software that connects with everything. And then we also have a standalone platform that's releasing publicly this month that we have active customers on that plugs into both ServiceNow, specifically ServiceNow CPQ, and then Conga platform and a few other CPQs where we're agnostic there.
Okay, excellent. So we did the podcast at the right time. So when a couple of new things come out. Now, tell me from your user point of view, right? So what business problem is most likely to make them take a serious look at RenderDraw? If you would have, I have an idea, one, two, three key business problems that you're solving for them, what would these be?
Yeah, so I would probably hone in on real complex configurations, something that's going to require a really heavy set of assembly CAD models. Those things typically are very high ticket items, and if customers or users end up only seeing like drop downs and maybe even a static image if we're lucky, before we get involved. Basically, there's a lot of confusion around purchasing those products. So time to sell on the visually configured items is really important. That's fantastic. What we've really found is the high ROI items are things that we're actually providing values for the CPQ from. So, for instance, we've had quite a bit of work in the roofing, metal bending, and then also adjacent services like flooring. So by deriving measurement information either through like satellite footage or our LiDAR app, basically we're providing a lot of value and quick turnaround time for ROI in those cases. When it comes to the data centers and high tech elements, these basically were kind of untouched in the CPQ world. There are obviously CPQ vendors that serve high tech, but when it comes to how these things are actually sold and serviced, especially when you have like a data center company, that was kind of an intangible where sales were always separated from operations. So we fit in that nice niche in between those and provide a lot of value. And really, like I mentioned earlier, we really started off with this vanity thing of, hey, it's 3D and it's sexy and it's nice. And then we've kind of honed in over the years on, hey, this is how we're providing tangible value. We can give you the sexy all day long, no problem. But at the end of the day, like sophisticated IT buyers are looking for something other than a sexy thing to put on their website that has no real ROI or driving any revenue.
Got it. One question which comes up with customers often, at least in my world, is also do you integrate with any of the CAD systems, like an Autodesk, SolidWorks, PTC Creo, or many others, right? Is that also a requirement that your customers mention, or is that not something that you typically address?
Yeah, so when it comes to integrating into those platforms, obviously the on-prem CAD platforms that's where the bulk of the enterprise customers still are. So the integration there is a little bit more hands-on, I would say, in terms of creating an outbound integration from something like an AutoCAD on-prem. So really, when we think about this is kind of a multi-tier issue. We need to know what a definition of done is. So, for instance, if a mechanical engineer is just drafting, uh, having that get to a point where it's reached the revision in which we want to present this to end customers, that definition of done is different for every single customer that I've ever talked to. Same with the different CAD systems that they have. So in general, we've got a API that allows us to ingest all of those files. We do multiple passes to process them and make sure that they're very efficient in loading without any kind of extensions or anything like that. That API is available to all of our customers. We can bulk load a bunch of those, but it's really specific to the underlying customer on how they want that CAD integration to work. So we've got quite a few different customers that are doing an outbound integration from their CAD system. There are a few that are on the CAD systems that are cloud-based, which are pretty easy to fetch information from via APIs. But the bulk of it is going to be one large swath of conversions and compressions to get that first batch, and then everything else after that's kind of one way unidirectional from the CAD system to the Salesforce or system of record.
Got it. So now we clarified what you do, right? Now let's talk about who you do it for, right? So
Sure.
tell me a little bit more about your ideal customer profile. What industry are they in? What customer size is it, and what regions do you focus on?
Yeah, so I guess working backwards, we're primarily in the United States. We have different SIs that serve us globally. So if you're a customer in Japan that wants to sell auto parts or something like that, we've got partners there as well. We've shifted over time. We were going to have international offices everywhere, but we kind of found out that our strength is really providing the technology that these other SI partners that exist out in the marketplace can go and implement and then become proficient in. So we typically serve US based customers, but we have calls and customers all over the world now.
Hmm.
When it comes to ideal customer size and profile, originally we had this idea that we were going to start by serving the smallest companies, the smallest manufacturers in the world with enterprise grade technology that they could actually manage. I think what ended up kind of shooting us in the foot with that was typically those that end up on Salesforce or a system that's similar to that expect a certain sales cycle and expect kind of that Salesforce treatment where nine people jump on a call and that kind of thing. And so we kind of had to hone in on that over the years to where now we're basically mid-market to enterprise. And then, if the deal's convenient and the customer seems self-sufficient, a small to mid-sized business would be able to self-service our product as well. But in general, we're looking at companies that are 500 to 10,000 plus employees. And this dynamic's changing, right? I mean, AI is kind of changing everything, and the way that customers are buying is shifting. But in general, we're looking at that kind of upper mid market to enterprise level companies. And our current focus right now, in terms of like ideal customer profile, industrial manufacturing is why I started the company. I love manufacturing, serving those audiences. The market kind of dictated this, but we've shifted heavy into high tech data centers, and then also service companies, roofing companies, and those kind of things. All of those have just become kind of based off of what the market has provided us, our ideal customer.
Got it. Very good. And I think the first time I heard about RenderDraw was in a Salesforce meeting, and I think somebody mentioned you as one of the visual partners that they have, right? And so I was wondering also, how tightly are you really tied into the whole Salesforce platform versus being independent of it? And what's the benefit for you, or the disadvantage of having that?
Well, the disadvantage would be obviously there's a whole market of customers out there that don't have Salesforce and maybe never will have Salesforce. So as we started off, I started off sales or RenderDraw as a Salesforce ISV only. We only focused on managed package deliveries and deployments. Honestly, it was just what I knew and what I loved. Loved Salesforce when I started it and figured we would get started in that area and then grow as need be. We're very tightly knit with Salesforce. We work with their product teams. We were with the original Revenue Cloud team before that product was even announced and worked on co-developing a solution for it. So we're really tight knit with the Salesforce ecosystem. What we ended up finding is, I guess, especially in the past year and a half, maybe 2 years, in the changing ecosystem of especially CPQ, a lot of customers are kind of agnostic when it comes to where their CPQ is or what brand it is. So just by default, we get great opportunities that come to us from amazing companies, and it was on other platforms or something along those lines. So we work with those other platforms as well, but I would say Salesforce is bringing most of our business and basically what we're really well known for.
If your company is evaluating CPQ and you're not sure which vendors are actually worth your time, try the free Novo CPQ Briefing Match app. You answer a few questions about your business and requirements, and it gives you a more focused starting shortlist of relevant CPQ solutions. It's meant to save time, reduce noise, and make early CPQ research a lot easier. Go to novocpq.com and click on the CPQ podcast page to find it. Now let's look at one of the implementation projects so that we get an idea on how a typical RenderDraw project looks like, right?
Sure.
So what I would be most interested in is to say, what does a customer need to do before the project starts? How long does it take? Yeah, let's start with that.
Yeah, so we started off with the idea that we wanted to do everybody's products across the board. And what we ended up finding out is most of these manufacturing companies, especially large enterprise manufacturing companies, having all of their ducks in a row in terms of the data, in terms of what they want to see through all those interactions, it rarely comes together that way. So we've kind of shifted our model a little bit to where we start off with what would be considered, it's not a proof of concept, but call it a pilot phase, where we would start off with an isolated set of products that they want. We typically try and push for their most complex products. And the reason for that is we're kind of setting the tone for how everything is going to be done moving forward. So one thing we haven't mentioned up until this point, everything that we do is serviceable by a Salesforce admin level individual. And the reason why that's important is most other visuals that you've ever seen, whether it's 2D or 3D, are custom coded, very brittle projects. So what we end up doing is having the customer isolate which products that they have, both in the configuration software of choice. So if you've uploaded a full product schema into Logic and you have your blueprint ready and you just want visualizations on top of that, great start. If you're starting from scratch and completely greenfield and we're doing Revenue Cloud or somebody else, basically what we try to do is isolate down the most complex experience and then an additional average one. And what we end up doing, either through handholding an SI partner or if they just want us to do all of it, we set that up. But the expectation is at the end of the project or the end of that pilot phase, the admin level individual that we just mentioned before would be able to pick it up and run with it. So everything that we do is reproducible. All of our APIs are selectable via a UI interface, and everything is scalable through that way. And really what we're trying to do is kind of help the customer and the users reimagine what they think visuals are going to be. We have a lot of customers that have started with a different visualization provider, and they get used to this kind of brittle custom code experience, which is really poor and really bad. And a lot of what we do is re-education, especially in that pilot phase, where we basically do the visualization, attach it to an existing configuration. We'll just use SteelBrick as the example. SteelBrick configurator, it's been in place, they're happy with it, but they need to up the experience before they show it to partners. With that, we would add in the first visualization for them or guide them through doing that. And from there, the expectation would be either a partner or somebody on the internal team would pick it up and run with it with the rest of the files and the rest of the products that they have.
And one follow-up question to what you just mentioned is especially for concerning SI partners, system integration partners, right? Are most projects with system integration partners or most projects with someone from the RenderDraw team at this point?
At this point, we're basically shifted over into unless we have a special agreement with a customer. We've got several customers that love our services and know that we know our product better than anybody else could. Outside of that, we almost 100% rely on the SI partners. And the reason being, every new customer, every new opportunity, they either already have a preferred SI or it's been brought in based off of Salesforce, and it's something that's out of our control. So we switched up the paradigm to really just rely heavily on these SIs to be able to do what they're good at, which is setup, configuration, and moving forward with a full-blown implementation. And it's a fantastic kind of paradigm because we're really not after the services dollars. We're more after creating a better product and improving that week over week, and allowing them to have the services dollars and getting that product feedback through them has been really, really fruitful for us.
Excellent. And then also one follow-up question, especially regarding the maintenance afterwards. So, would most of the system integrators do the maintenance afterwards, or your team, or does it the customer themselves? What do you think? What's the most common case?
It generally is a mixed bag. Most common case is once it's set up and ready to go, which takes just a couple weeks. Honestly, we can get 3D visualization or 2D visualization set up in less than a day. But in general, our practice is it takes about a month for an enterprise company to get up and rolling. From that, the administration of that, it really is a kind of a mixed bag, but most of the enterprise customers out there already have a working relationship with an SI, and part of their maintenance contract or part of their services contract, they just take on those roles on top of whatever the CPQ maintenance looks like.
Got it. Now let's look at where the solution is used mostly, right? So, what would you say for sales teams? Is it for I have an idea, also for channel partners or for self-serve? What would you say?
I think it always starts internal. So every project we've ever had, it starts with a guinea pig group that wants to see the visualizations first, and then they typically get so excited based off of the results and the speed. The project expands, and then as part of that expansion, almost 100% of our customer base has gone into like a partner sales channel, be it like a digital experience or something along those lines. Some are going all the way with self-service, but in general, we kind of start off internal and then it spreads out into customer facing, customer self-service.
Got it. Now I ask you a question which might be a little bit strange, but I would be interested to see what you say, right? So if you would be a customer buying a CPQ solution, any CPQ solution, visual CPQ solution, I should say, right? So what are the two, three things you would say you have to pay attention to, no matter what size you are or what industry you're in? What are two, three key things that you think are really key to look out for as a customer?
I think that implementation is probably the biggest red flag. And reason being, this is how you figure out if you're dealing with an actual product or you're dealing with a company that's posing as a product that actually is just the services team. The reason I say that there are a lot of visual CPQ providers, and I'm doing air quotes for the people that are just listening, but visual CPQ providers out there that claim that they have a visual product. And in actuality, it's a custom implementation that's doing a one-off visualization. The real questions that you need to be asking are kind of similar to the questions you need to ask about whether you're evaluating the CPQ itself, like Revenue Cloud or Logic. What is it going to take to get the initial deployment done? And then what does maintenance look like? And that maintenance question is pretty damning when you have a product that isn't really a product, because you're going to hear a lot of back and forth of, oh, we'll help you out. We'll do this for you. We'll upload the files. And if you couldn't by yourself administer that visual tool alongside the CPQ tool that you're buying, it's a giant red flag. And that's probably the biggest one that I would point out.
Hmm.
Outside of that, customization is always going to be a requirement one way or another. So thinking about it from a product perspective, what kind of customizations can we do? What APIs are available, both on the component level and also like the actual application layer? And this is becoming more important as we start talking about like having AI models go through and make sure that they can configure your CPQ elements. If those are not available to you or they're secret or anything like that, they're not fully documented, you're basically buying a one-off piece of software that's going to need professional maintenance for the rest of the term. And that's not necessarily a terrible thing. What I will say is it's just another consideration because at that point you're basically buying a custom software project that you're going to have to maintain, and that's something that needs to be considered across the budget of the entire lifetime of the app.
And I think that's a fair point. But let me follow up on one of the things you mentioned. AI has been mentioned in every CPQ discussion I can remember over the last 2.5 years at least, right? So I want to mention it here as well. How do you use it in your solution? And do you already have customers that use it in production and have a really a measurable benefit at the end because of it?
Yeah, so this is a multi-pronged question, I would say, especially given the nature of everything. Yes, we use AI pretty thoroughly, especially on the Journeys platform. Our goal with the Journeys platform was you never have to touch the keyboard. You can just speak your slide deck into existence, and it's fully immersive. So, as part of that, every single thing that you could possibly do on a slide platform, we have exposed to AI, and it'll do everything as far as playing your story, make sure that the high points are there for you. Uh, when it comes to the CPQ integration with Journeys of the CPQ visualizations that we provide, a lot of it is a two-prong approach, right? So I think right now we've got a big issue with trust in AI. The trust that I see on a daily basis that is non-existent is the ability to go forward and buy something, especially an expensive something like a spare part or a configured good without that visual verification. So the way that we kind of see this, we integrate with Agentforce for Revenue Cloud. We obviously integrate with Logic. They have a great AI elements built into it. We're providing that visual verification during the configuration itself. And then when it comes to our platform, everything from importing data, you can point it at a data sheet on your website. We parse through all of that and then put together the product configuration model inside of our platform based off of that. So varying degrees of AI all over the place. The general rule is if you include AI in your product, there's always going to be somebody that's pissed off about it just because they have their own AI provider or something like that. So we have to be open to the ability to expose whatever we're doing through the context of the situation, allow for the AI model to do what it's good at, but allow the customer to then visually verify before making a buying decision.
Mm. One more question concerning AI, right? So
Sure.
especially as a follow-up. So in this case, so you already do a couple of things with AI right now. Where do you think this is going for the next 12 to 24 months for you and the customers that you serve?
I think basically every workflow, at least at our company, has changed when it comes to doing anything. So moving forward, every one of our products has AI integration where your AI chatbot, whatever your favorite agent is, whether you're on Claude Opus or whatever you're using, needs to be 100% usable by a non-human.
Mm.
So this has like really changed a lot of how we used to do things like charging customers. We were charging per seat before. Now we've adjusted that to where we're making sure that they're not paying for things that they don't 100% need. But really, what it comes down to is we're planning on every one of our products having the ability to be used, consumed, and exposed through AI in a safe way to where they can make sure that they can extract like CAD product data using the AI elements. Where I see this kind of going for the next year, 2 years, I think we're going to see some pretty seismic shifts in the AI front. There are going to be a few clear front runners like Anthropic and Gemini, I think are probably going to start rolling with it. Not to say that we dislike OpenAI or any of the other model providers, but we're just going to see some consolidation. And then I think the pricing differences between all the different models is really going to expose what kind of workflows use AI all the time versus what ends up needing a really high thinking, high quality model. So for instance, we think about like journeys. There are a lot of things that don't need a heavy AI touch, like moving text on a screen or making the 3D projection of a 3D slide a little bit better. So we end up using something like a Gemini Flash model for that. But then when we start thinking about placement of furniture spatially in a room, that takes a little bit more thinking, a little bit more understanding, or identifying products inside of a spec sheet for a RFP. Those are the kind of distinguishing elements that I think the enterprise buyers are going to get a little bit wiser on. But it's taken some time because most of the enterprise buyers that are out there generally are just starting to play with AI at a broad scale. So I think there's going to be a lot of education, so a lot of consolidation. Our target and strategy is to make sure that everything's usable by AI or by a human. And it's going to change a lot of our workflow in terms of what we're providing. As I mentioned before, all of our new products are focused on the ROI that we're delivering. So when we first started the sexy spinning, bookshelf or whatever you're attempting to sell, that wasn't a good play back then. Now 2020 hindsight, but even worse of a play now, where most buying decisions are made based off of an initial query that started an AI agent.
Very interesting. I wish we would have a little bit more time to talk more about it, but very interesting discussion. So my last question for you is really, what's a good way for interested listeners to contact you or your team if they have more follow-up questions concerning RenderDraw?
Yeah, we are heavily on LinkedIn, renderdraw.com. If you want to try out journeys.studio. And from there, we are at basically every Salesforce event that's out there, and then also ServiceNow events and Conga events. So feel free to reach out on LinkedIn or go to our website, and we can get in touch and talk through some awesome problems.
Erik, thank you very much for making time for the CPQ podcast today.
Appreciate it, Frank. Thanks for the opportunity.
I'd like to thank everyone for listening and hope you learned something interesting today. If you like the podcast, please go ahead and rate it on iTunes or share it with your friends and colleagues. In the meantime, you can find us online at www.novocpq.com. So long, everyone.